I work as a nighttime census taker, and the numbers don't add up. Most people think census work is dull, just paperwork, names, and numbers. They're not wrong during the day, but my assignment is different. I work the night shift census, a specialized program where we gather data on households that are unreachable during normal hours. My supervisor insists it's because some residents are nocturnal workers, but that explanation never sat right with me. The pay is excellent, the rules are oddly strict, and the assignments always arrive in a plain envelope slipped under my door at twilight. I'm required to use their issued tablet, record the number of people in each home, and never, under any circumstance, ask questions beyond the script. The first few nights seemed uneventful. The addresses took me into forgotten neighborhoods, rows of houses that looked abandoned but weren't. Some windows glowed faintly, though the light had the sickly yellow hue of a failing bulb. Doors would creak open just enough for pale faces to peer out, eyes reflecting like glass marbles in the dark. They would answer in flat, monotone voices: 5 residents. 6 residents. 2 residents. I typed the numbers as ordered, ignoring how each one seemed slightly hesitant, as if rehearsed. Every time I thanked them, the door would shut before I finished the sentence, leaving me standing on cracked sidewalks in silence that felt staged, like the set of a play between acts. By the second week, I began to notice discrepancies. House 43 Pine Hollow Lane reported 3 residents. A day later, my list directed me back to the same address, where the same figure behind the door now stated 7 residents. At 12 Willow Court, a trembling man whispered 2, but his voice was drowned out by the sound of dozens of footsteps moving restlessly inside, too many for the number claimed. When I tried to glance past him, the door slammed so violently it rattled the frame. My tablet accepted the numbers without complaint, but I couldn't stop my own calculations running in my head. By my count, if I added every household's answer across a single block, there were more people than houses could physically hold. It grew stranger when the numbers started repeating. Entirely different households, miles apart, would give identical counts: 13, 13, 13, spoken in the exact same flat intonation, like they were part of a chorus. Some addresses didn't exist on any map, yet when I walked where the tablet guided me, there was always a door, waiting, in the middle of an empty lot or a collapsed building. One night, I hesitated outside a boarded-up duplex, convinced no one could live there, but the door still opened before I knocked. A child's face appeared, wide-eyed and wrong somehow, as though the features were placed on the skull without care. She whispered, 14 residents. Behind her, every shadow in the house seemed to whisper the number in unison, a hiss that made my skin crawl. I thought of quitting, but the envelopes kept arriving. Last night was different, though. The address I was sent to was my own apartment. Confused, I knocked out of morbid curiosity. My door swung open. Inside, the lights were off, but I saw myself standing there, holding the same census tablet, face expressionless. My double spoke in that same hollow monotone I'd heard from every other door. 2 residents. I live alone. I live alone. That fact usually gave me peace, silence after long nights of knocking on doors, filling in forms, and jotting down the quiet truths of strangers' lives. But lately, solitude has started to feel more like a burden than a relief. Because when you spend every night asking others who lives with them, who belongs in their households, and who counts on their census forms, you start wondering about your own walls. My apartment is small, just 2 rooms and a narrow kitchen, but sometimes I swear it feels crowded. I'll come home, toss my jacket on the hook, and feel the air stir in a way that doesn't make sense, like someone brushing past me, or standing just out of sight. The silence I used to love is no longer silent, it hums, faint and persistent, like wires buzzing in the walls. At first, I told myself I was just tired. The census isn't glamorous, and working the night shift means you're already half cut off from normal life. People open their doors with suspicion, half awake or annoyed. Some never open them at all, and I scribble refuse to answer in neat handwriting. Others, though, they answer in ways that make no sense. One old woman insisted there were 13 people in her 1-bedroom flat. I looked inside, empty except for her, wrapped in a shawl, the television flickering against her lined face. "They don't come out when strangers are here," she whispered, as if it explained everything. Another man claimed his daughter was both alive and not alive, depending on the day of the count. He wrote her name down himself, his hand shaking, the pen digging deep into the paper as if carving it in blood. It unsettled me, but I pressed on. We're trained to keep the data clean, factual, unbiased. Numbers are supposed to ground us in reality. But the numbers weren't adding up. Even in buildings I'd canvassed thoroughly, there were discrepancies, lists of names that didn't match, households that seemed to grow or shrink from one night to the next. Sometimes I'd see shadows at the far end of the hallway where I knew no one lived, lingering like half-drawn figures waiting for me to acknowledge them. And when I checked the registry the next day, new entries would appear, residents with faces I had never seen, names I could swear were fabricated. That's when the dreams began. They weren't normal dreams, not the fuzzy, half-forgotten kind. These were sharp, too vivid, too real. I'd dream I was knocking on a door that wouldn't open, over and over, my knuckles bleeding from the force. Or I'd be invited in, only to find a living room filled wall to wall with figures whose faces had been erased, each one staring with blank, expectant patience. I'd wake gasping, sometimes with the faint metallic taste of blood in my mouth. And always, at the edge of waking, a voice would say, "Keep counting. Don't stop until you reach us all." The strangest moment came just last week. I was home, filling in the backlog of paperwork by lamplight. My own census sheet sat on the table, blank as always. With a kind of bitter humor, I wrote my name under head of household. For number of residents, I wrote 1. My pen hesitated. Something about it felt wrong. My eyes flicked up to the far corner of the room, the empty chair by the window. Except it wasn't empty. For the briefest second, I saw the outline of someone sitting there, perfectly still, watching me. I dropped the pen. By the time I blinked, the chair was vacant again. But when I looked down at my form, the number beside residents had changed. I hadn't written it, but the paper now read, 2. I tore the sheet up that night, shoved it in the trash, and tried to laugh at myself. But the next morning, another census form lay neatly on my desk, blank, waiting. It hadn't been delivered by my office. No one had access to my apartment. And yet, the form was there. The instructions were the same as always, count every resident. No exceptions. Now, every time I walk through my front door, I find myself pausing, listening, counting. 1 breath, 2 breaths. My steps sound heavier than they should, like they belong to more than one person. My reflection in the mirror lags a fraction of a second behind, as though it's waiting for something else to catch up. At night, when I drift toward sleep, I can hear pages turning softly from the kitchen table, as if someone is filling out forms I haven't touched. And when I finally gather the courage to look, there are always more names. Names I don't recognize. Names that shouldn't exist. I used to live alone. At least, I think I did. But the numbers don't lie, do they? They keep climbing, one by one, night after night. And no matter how many times I shred the papers or burn them in the sink, the count returns, larger than before. Tonight, I came home to find my latest sheet already filled in. My name was still there at the top. But under number of residents, it said, 7. And as I sit here writing this, I hear them breathing in the next room. And as I sit here writing this, I hear them breathing in the next room. It isn't a steady rhythm like mine, nor the gentle rise and fall you'd expect from someone asleep. It's staggered, wet, almost labored, as though whoever it is trying to force air through a throat too narrow, too ruined to function properly. Every inhale drags like claws over gravel, every exhale rattles like glass shaking in a box. I tell myself I imagined it, that my nerves have made me jump at shadows, but the cadence continues, too deliberate, too close. I've gone over the census sheets again and again, searching for a mistake that might explain this. I had one address listed for tonight, a house that had been condemned years ago. But when I arrived, lights were burning faintly inside, and the front door stood half open as if waiting. I called out the way protocol demands, introducing myself, clipboard ready. No answer came. The rooms were bare of furniture, the floors coated in dust thick enough to swallow prints, except for one set. Bare, human feet. Leading not out the door, but inward, to the bedroom at the end of the hall. I followed them because my training told me to. I wish I hadn't. That's where I found the figure. Standing in the center of the room as if it had been waiting for me. It didn't speak, didn't move, didn't even blink. It just breathed, the same ruined breathing I hear now, scribbling itself into my ears until it feels like part of me. I don't know why I wrote a name down on the form. Maybe it compelled me. Maybe that's how it ensures it's counted, ensures it spreads. All I know is that when I finished filling in the line, the figure was gone. The room was empty again. But the breathing didn't leave with it. Now, in my own apartment, that sound follows me. At first it was faint, as if muffled through walls miles thick. Then it grew closer, behind the door, at the foot of the bed, pressed against the back of my neck when I tried to sleep. Tonight it's unmistakable. It's in the next room, breathing, waiting, as though it followed me home by stepping out of the census sheets themselves. I'm afraid to look, because some part of me already knows what I'll find. It won't be a stranger anymore. It will be me. Because when I checked the log just now, desperate for some clue, I noticed something I swear wasn't there before. My name is written twice. Once in the section marked enumerator, my rightful place. And once again, beneath the heading subjects counted. The ink is mine. The handwriting is mine. And the moment I saw it, I heard the breathing shift, suddenly in perfect rhythm with my own. I live alone. But the census does not allow for discrepancies. The sheets must be balanced, the tallies exact. If my name appears twice, it means the count isn't wrong, it means I am. And as the sound in the next room grows heavier, wetter, more insistent, I realize the truth: the census isn't about tracking the living. It's about making room for something else. Something that fills the empty lines. Something that duplicates. The pen still sits on my desk where I dropped it, the form spread open beside me. My duplicate signature gleams like it's been written in something darker than ink. And the breathing, it's closer now. No longer in the next room. No longer separated by any wall. It's behind me, rising and falling in perfect time with my chest, almost brushing the back of my ear. I won't turn around. I can't. Because if I do, I'll see what the census has already counted. I'll see myself, drawn hollow, dragging each breath through a ruined throat, waiting to take my place so the numbers finally add up. And as I sit here, writing these final words, I realize what terrifies me most isn't that the breathing will stop. It's that it never will.